Hi, everyone, and welcome to Elevate Your Life on Dr. T TV. I'm Dr. T, and with me today is Stephen Berkowicz, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about him in a moment. But I want to remind everybody that this is the place where emotionally sensitive, highly intuitive, also highly driven people are able to have a voice and are able to learn tools in order how to take all of these incredible creative gifts and put them into what is purposeful for you and make it really productive for you. So Stephen Berkowitz is an expert in unscripted television. He's a producer and a director and a developer of shows like the Rachel Zoe Project, Extreme Makeover Home Edition, BattleBots, and Outdaughtered. And Stephen, you have so many credentials and so many just amazing things that you have done and you are up to. Why don't you share with us a little bit more about yourself?
All right. Well, thank you for having me, first of all. Really appreciate it. So I've been doing unscripted television for a little over 15 years. I moved to Los Angeles in 2004 after a 5-year career as a local sports reporter slash anchor slash producer slash camera operator. I don't know what you know about local sports, but you kind of do it all. And I cut my teeth in that kind of realm. And it was a great learning experience in terms of what was about to come for me as an unscripted producer. And so when I moved here in 2004, looking for kind of something bigger in life, if you will, 2004 was when reality television was really blowing up. Yeah. You know, in 2000 you had Survivor, surely you had Big Brother, and you had Hell's Kitchen, and you had Extreme Makeover Home Edition in 2003. And slowly but surely, you had these big shows kind of. And 2004 was a great time for me to move here. And having a sports background, I was really lucky that ESPN was starting a little experiment with reality television. And they were doing this show called I'd Do Anything, which was kind of like a sports version of Fear Factor.
Okay.
I applied for the job, right? And I'll never forget this. I didn't know any better but to interview in a suit. I mean, I had come from news and sports, and that's what you did, right? Like, you interviewed in a suit. And so this production company, their office is in Santa Monica. It's in the middle of the summer. It's hot. It's Los Angeles, right? Everybody's in either shorts and a t-shirt, flip-flops, and there's this guy walking in a black suit with a tie, just to interview for an associate producer job, which in reality is, it's not really a glamorous job at all. And like, the jokes later on after I got the job were like, they thought I was an accountant.
Oh, funny.
Or they thought like somebody was in trouble, somebody was getting arrested. Right? But anyway, I went in. The wonderful person who I interviewed with, Brian Richardson, who's he's a terrific producer and a good friend today, had also worked in news. He came from news. And so he's also from the Midwest. I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. And so he was from Indianapolis, and we connected right away, and I got the job, and literally 3 days later I started. And I've kind of been rolling in the unscripted world ever since. For your audience, that's kind of the genius or the wonderful thing about unscripted is once you get in, it really is something that's contagious. It's something that you can learn pretty quickly, and you can kind of roll from one show to the next as long as you build your relationships and as long as your skill set continues to grow. And for me, I really found, a love for storytelling. And I found a love for the closeness that you get with your crew and with, your fellow, the people that you go to from show to show. And I found a knack for it, truthfully. And so, I from this little ESPN show, I rolled to a couple shows for Spike TV. It's now the Paramount Network, but it was Spike TV back then. And those were like kind of ridiculous shows. Like, there was a show called Carpocalypse, which was like a demolition show in Florida. And it was crazy. These really bigger than life characters that would build a car and then crash it on the weekends. Right. And it was kind of my, introduction to this world, this crazy world. And I kind of fell in love with it. And then I got to do this pretty amazing show called Pros versus Joes, where literally it was these pro athletes taking on average Joes. And I got to interview people like Dennis Rodman and Michael Irvin, Jerry Rice, Bo Jackson, some of the greatest athletes ever. And so that was a fascinating experience. Goldberg, one of the greatest wrestlers,
Oh, wow.
May have been WWF back then, but big time wrestling. He body slammed me, which is always an experience I'll remember. But I did some sports reality, and then that era in about 2007 was when those big house reality shows started.
Oh, right.
Recall, yeah, like the whole thing was put people in a house, have them compete for something. And so I had to kind of learn that skill set, right? Because that's a very different skill set in terms of storytelling from doing a sports reality show. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And so I did, I think, 4 of those. I think I did back to back to back to back.
They were really becoming the model. Yeah.
Yeah, they were. And again, it was something that was fun, but those were really long hours because they're really kind of a 24/7 situation.
Container there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because the cast is competing usually during the day, and then we're following their reality, for lack of a better word, at night, and then we are filming until they fall asleep, and then we're filming them when they wake up. So that was I did 4 shows. And those were pretty exhausting. And then I would say I got like my big break, which was Extreme Makeover Home Edition.
Okay.
And I think that was 2009 into 2010. And I did that for 2 years. That was really 2 years of my life. It was an incredible experience, 2 straight seasons. And that was the very much a life-changing experience because you're really able to help people, which is very rare in television. Make an impact on somebody's life, a positive impact on somebody's life. Wow. And those were interviews with families that I'll never forget, interviews, seeing people's lives change right before your eyes. When you surprise a family that's been through whether it's a natural disaster or a family whose mom has terminal cancer, and just to then see them get a new home, that's going to change their life. That's something that you're always going to remember, and that gives you that warm and fuzzy feeling that doing a show where you're trying to find Antonio Sabato Jr. love doesn't quite.
That is so funny.
So Extreme Makeover Home Edition was a big kind of game changer for me. And from there, I kind of made the decision that I really wanted to be an executive producer. And that was kind of my, what we would call a showrunner. Is what, where you have your, so the production company or the network gives you a show to run. That was kind of my goal. Okay. Along with, I always had the desire to develop my own shows and to kind of, have my own ideas. So those were kind of the 2 things that I wanted to do in the unscripted space. So that was kind of the path that I took, and mentioned the Rachel Zoe project. And so that was one of the steps towards becoming a showrunner. And I was the supervising producer and director on season 5 of Rachel. She was incredible to work with, as well as her husband, Roger, and her whole team. And that was an amazing experience simply because I was not a fashion guy.
Got it. You weren't one of us like hanging on the edge of all of her recommendations, right?
Yeah. So like not even to the point where I was literally a guy who would go shopping once a year.
Got it.
And bargain basement prices, Reddit it. And I'll never forget I was the supervising producer. My executive producer, Derek Wan, who's now an executive at Netflix. He's one of my closest friends. We were about to go to New York Fashion Week, right? Very first shoot, I still had not met Rachel face to face. And he looked at me and he goes, it's like, Steve, you need to go shopping. He's like, just take the credit card out, hand it to the person there, let them shop for you. Because she's going to look at you, she's going to cry. And it was I think I literally spent $2,000 shopping before I met her. And I was so nervous. She was wonderful. And she's she's so smart and clever, you know, and the one-liners are amazing. And that was a great experience simply because she moves so fast and she's so quick-witted. There was no time to think. We were just reacting.
Yeah.
And so again, it's a very different skill set from Extreme Makeover Home Edition, where Extreme Makeover Home Edition is very the storytelling. There's so much pre-production that goes into it, and you're adjusting because the house is built so fast, and the storytelling is very emotional.
It is,
Rachel was very much on the fly. She would change things. You had to constantly adjust with her schedule. But for me personally, I could never have imagined as a kid growing up in Cincinnati, Ohio, or being, you know, a sports guy in Johnson City, Tennessee, you know, a few years back, that I would be, you know, I mean, this is from Paris Fashion Week at the Louis Vuitton show, you know, the background, right? Like, I could never have imagined that. And so for me, I'm very grateful to have had that experience, you know, to be able to go to those places. And like the Paris Fashion Week is, not just was it fun to be there and was it a great experience, but I'll never forget working with those French camera operators.
Right.
Obviously, not being able to, I don't speak French. And like the joke that my whole team had was like the guys there, they had worked for a couple of CNN crews, and clearly they understood a few English terms in terms of like Zoom and like rack, like certain terms. But I was using different terminology. And so sometimes they would misconstrue or misunderstand what I was saying. And, you know, I would have to walk over, and it was loud. Like these are, fashion shows are really loud, and I would get so frustrated. So I would like walk over, and I would be trying to point to them. I would be trying to like point them as to what to do. And the joke on the walkies and then afterwards when we would have dinner was, you know, the louder you yell, Steve, it doesn't help. To like clarify, like they're
just
not going to
so
understand. Yeah, you're just breaking our eardrum in the walkie.
Oh my gosh.
Like, you know, so, but yeah, so, you know, from Rachel Zoe, I kind of went on and I did BattleBots, which is, again, like a crazy show for ABC, and now it's on Discovery. And that one, if like you're a tech person, or if you're into like that techie world, like it's a great show. And Outdaughtered, you know, I eventually became a showrunner is where I kind of landed. And Outdaughtered was a great opportunity as a showrunner, and that's a big hit for TLC. Adam and Danielle Busby have quintuplets, five little quintuplets, you know, that's five, so quintuplets, as well as a daughter that's older. And so they've got their hands full, and they live in Texas. And that was a big challenge. Again, a very different skill set. Because that's a true docuseries. You know, whereas Rachel's centered around her business, this was really a family docuseries. And when I was on the show, that second season, I mean, they were 1.5. Oh. So not much dialogue coming from 1.5-year-olds. So that was a big challenge in terms of getting story out of mom and dad, you know, and a 5-year-old, when the show was really about a bunch of 1.5-year-olds. Right. So it was a challenge from a story perspective, but it's a big hit now on TLC.
Amazing.
Credit to that season too. So I just told you a lot of things. And
well, this is so, you know, it's just showing this trajectory, you know, of what you've done creatively and what you've developed in the world and what you've co-created. So, and one thing I just got to mention, that when you said reality TV is like, you know, you kind of do it and then it kind of keeps rolling or whatever, I thought that's what happens to me. And I think that's what happens to a lot of people. You start to watch something, once you're in, now you're sort of in the world of like watching more reality TV and more reality TV. And anyway, that just made me laugh. I'm like, I know, I feel like I'm still rolling with reality TV from Survivor. They hooked me. And as a psychologist, you can understand, you know, I literally love to observe human people and understand like what's really going on here below what it looks like is going on. So This is all right up my alley. So I'm wondering, so Stephen, with each thing that you have been a part of, each thing that you created, were these all, did these feel like conscious choices? Like you're following your intuition, following your purpose? Was it like that, or like was it sort of like, well, this is happening, and I'm interested in checking this out? Like, how was that for you to go through that, that trajectory with yourself, and what is it that you feel so connected to about all of it?
So I want to clarify something. So those shows I did not create.
God, well, you co-create by participating in them. I get it. You co-created their ability.
This is very specific because there's a creator of the show, and then we're considered producers. Again, that's the scripted world where you have like showrunners who are a lot of times considered co-creators.
I guess I just mean that you made it possible you were a part of making it possible for these outcomes to happen.
Sure. Yeah. I just want to, there will be people who will be very upset.
I so get it.
With that term creator.
Got
and
it.
I'm friends with those people.
So you were producing, developing
Correct.
outcomes that were occurring.
Sure.
Yeah. So, and so yeah, how did you see that all happening in terms of your choice making and all of that? And then again, what is it that you really feel drawn to in this work?
So it's a great question because each show is so very different, right? Yeah. And for me, the choices really come down to story and character, right? And so when you look at Extreme Makeover Home Edition, that is a really heartwarming show, but it's also telling stories of overcoming obstacles, which to me are the best stories. When you look at kind of the American experience, that's what it's about, right? Like it's overcoming obstacles and it's people rallying around each other. Those are the best stories. And that to me was the greatest part about the show, was to see a community rally around this kind of heroic family that was in need. And to see people, I mean, there's nothing like seeing a house get built in 1 week. There's nothing like it.
Yeah.
To tear it down on day 2 and then see it built, by day 7. There's nothing like it. And so, and then to interview, literally to sit across from someone and interview them for 2 hours and talk about their hardship. And then, at the beginning of the interview, and then after 2 hours, cover that entire arc of what this new beginning, this new life means to them, and sit there and you're crying and they're crying. Mm-hmm. Like that is, there's something very powerful about that. And so I always enjoyed those interviews with those families. And those were some of the best interviews as a producer that I ever did. For Rachel, that was truthfully talking about going to Paris or New York, that was a decision that I made really because I had never done a docu-follow, which is what we call kind of a show where we're kind of really just following a person. And I had never done, I do like to kind of challenge myself in terms of jumping into worlds that I've never done. And that I didn't know anything about fashion. And so both of those things were very different for me. So doing a show where I'm following somebody and doing a show that was fashion based, I had no idea. And so it was a big challenge for me, specifically early on in that show. And I got pretty good at it by the end of it. There's a show that I didn't tell you about called Vanderbilt MDs. It was the most difficult show that I've ever done. Oh. Not many people saw it, but it was on USA. And it was following 7 doctors at Vanderbilt Medical Center in Nashville. And it was pitched as the real life Grey's Anatomy. So we were following 7 young doctors who just so happened to live in a house. And it was really ultimately the way it came out was beautiful, shot beautifully, edited beautifully, and really a tremendous show that really shined a light on this profession. and these people who work so hard and tirelessly. But it was extremely difficult. And the choice for me to do that one was no one had ever tried that here in the States. It was a British show. The company had brought it over to America, and it was a daunting task. And I loved that challenge. My brother's a doctor, my father's a doctor, my mother's a nurse. And so for me, this was kind of my way to get a peek into the medical field and what they had all gone through. And so I was excited to kind of delve into that world. It turned out to be the hardest job I've ever had.
Oh, God.
But it was, if you're asking about the rationale behind these choices, and that was my reason to choose that. BattleBots, because that's the ultimate robot competition show. These really tech geniuses build robots, and then they compete in these 3-minute, fights, basically robot fights. And these guys some of them work for NASA. They come from MIT. They live in, Silicon Valley. And this is their hobby. They build these incredible robots, and then they fight them. And they come from all around the world. And it's a phenomenal thing to watch. And I wanted to do that show really because it was this kind of niche phenomenon that had grown to something so big. And I there's something that in me that loves, because I think I came from the sports background, I love big crowds, and we would get crowds of 1,000 people. I love the big stage. And that was a show that they do a really good job of creating a sports-like environment there. And so that was a lot of fun. We treated it in almost like a NASCAR type. It was almost boxing meets NASCAR, seeing them build the machines, and then they would get into the cage and fight. So that was a lot of fun. Outdaughtered was a unique one because I was the last person you would think that they would hire. I was the last person. I'm single, don't have kids. And I was very much like, well, okay, why am I? And then truthfully, it was kind of like, I really liked when I watched season 1, and I really liked the family, and I saw a lot of potential. Season 1 had done pretty well for them, enough to get a season 2, but they told me that they weren't super happy with season 1, but the ratings were good enough to get a season 2, and kind of said, hey, what would you do with season 2? And obviously they interviewed other people. And I told them, I was like, oh my God, I love family, and I love their siblings, and their overarching family, the ancillary characters. And I said, here's what I would do. And I gave them some ideas, and they just loved all the ideas. And I think for me, it was just it was a challenge. And I came up with some good ideas, and I assembled some great people to work with me. And it was really, again, kind of just the challenge. And so I would say it comes down to characters, and it comes down to story, and what the challenge is for me as a producer. And in that case, the Outdaughtered case, I saw an opportunity to create a look to the show, which I did. I was able to, because TLC gave me that freedom to create a look to the show that was unique to something that they didn't have on their other shows. And they allowed me to do that, which was really great and a lot of fun.
Stephen, this is so... I'm hearing so many things. I'm picking up on so many things in what I'm hearing. And it's really powerful. So this sense of... It really is the ultimate experience of a creative person. And I'm hearing how important it is for you to learn and grow in what you're doing, and where that allows you to go, into this zone with Rachel, into this zone with this family, I get this sense of what an education you're getting, this simultaneous process of development of a show, but development of yourself. And I really am getting the quality of how that is for you. Obviously you're trying to produce these outcomes, but it sounds like a very strategic process for you to truly develop lots of things in that situation, and just I really feel like with each thing, it sounds like you're really growing as a person. You're building a repertoire, but you're growing interpersonally. And is that am I tracking that right?
Yes, I would definitely say that I mean, it's been 15 years, and I certainly have, I mean, just naturally grow up over 15 years. And I mean, my philosophy kind of is you have to, whether it's good or bad, you have to take a little bit of something from each show that you do, each project you do, and bring it to the next one. You have to, there's no point in producing a project unless you're going to learn from it, you know, and that's good and bad. You learn what not to do and you learn what to do, you know, like you have to, because, you know, that's the only way you get better. I think from the standpoint of growth personally, you know, I mean, each project is different. And I think early in my career, you know, like doing those house shows, I don't think I was really thinking about that. It was really, you're learning the business.
Yeah.
I think Extreme Makeover Home Edition was one of those shows where you do grow personally. And you start to look at yourself, and, you know, I remember, you know, again, you have those moments that you never forget. And we did a show about a family woman who had, if I get this wrong, had leukemia. And we did this Be the Match, you know, where they bring bone marrow donors. We did something with Be the Match. And seeing this woman meet the person who had donated bone marrow to her, like this reunion, she had never met him, right? That to me was like a seminal moment in terms of being unselfish, right? It's a reminder to be unselfish. Like, okay, like you should do more with yourself, do more with your life, whether that's donating blood or whatever. It could be small things, it could be donating money, but here's somebody who changed another person's life. And what to him was a very small way, but to her was a very huge one. Similarly, I did an interview with a mother who had stage 4 cancer. She was teacher of the year. You know, everyone in this small North Carolina town loved her, and just talking to her about the legacy she wanted to leave behind for her daughters, and, you know, what she wanted to do with the remaining portion of her life. I remember thinking in that interview, you know, it was just about how we have to get the most out of our lives, and how, you know, the things that we complain about in our life, the things we go through in our life, yes, sometimes they're tough, and sometimes we get knocked down, but here's this woman who's battling cancer, and, you know, nothing that I'm going through is even remotely close to as difficult as what she is. And she's sitting here fighting, and, you know, she's willing to do whatever it takes to be there for her family. And, you know, she's got a teenage daughter and 2 little 5-year-old twins. And, you know, she would have done anything to stick around as long as she could to be there for them. And that was a big emotional moment for me to kind of see, to meet her and to be able to interview her. I mean, and being able to travel, like on the Rachel Zoe project, always that, I think travel is a great place for growth. And, you know, I think that is for people like friends of mine who've done Amazing Race, where you travel around the world. I think that's been a huge, thing. I think working with talent, you know, working with great talent, my friends. I haven't worked with Gordon Ramsay, but I know friends of mine who have, and he's such a smart guy. He's very talented. You know, being around talented people, it is, you know, you naturally get that wisdom, you know, and
you sync up.
Working with Ty Pennington was, you know, huge. You know, you just naturally, you naturally gain the wisdom you learn from people like that.
That is cool.
I mean, and Outdaughtered was certainly an experience, or being around 5 little babies. So
yeah, I can imagine you're getting lots of data for your files to assess, and so, you know, Stephen, what I'm curious about is, do you have a sense of what your purpose is? Have you thought about that and really thought through, like, in all that you're doing, you know, because you've done a lot, you've contributed a lot. Do you have a sense of what your purpose has been, or what it is, or what you think it should be?
That's it's very broad, bold question. I think, look, our job as producers in unscripted, really, it does come down to being a storyteller. And now in the age of streaming, we're really in the streaming
Yeah.
wars right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of content out there, and so it's incumbent upon us to tell great stories, to find great characters, and to bring out the best stories in those characters. And I think the older I get, the more I'm attracted to stories that are important. I'm producing a documentary right now for the first time.
Oh, awesome.
And that documentary is very personal to a friend of mine. And it's relevant to, something that's happening in our society right now. It's very, culturally and culturally relevant, socially relevant. And it's way different than anything I've ever done. But I think, like I said, you get a little bit older, you get a little bit more in tune with, things that are important to people. And I think telling stories that help, I don't want to say help people, but I think telling stories that make people feel something, telling stories that will drive conversation.
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah.
Telling stories that are disruptive. And those are the things that I think get me excited now. Whereas when I was coming up, it really was about learning the skill set, learning how to tell stories in different ways. I think now I'm in a position after 15 years to go, okay, great. I've learned a wide variety of skills. Now, what kind of stories can I tell that will really drive conversation and really be disruptive?
Well, it sounds to me like I feel like you're a teacher in all of that, right? Because when you're telling the story, you're transmitting something, you're teaching and facilitating through this methodology, right? Through this work. And it's very interesting. I'm in the beginning. Let me be clear. I'm in the beginning of working with a writer for a television series about being an emotional scientist, and what it's like, and the story that brought that to happen, right? Since I was a little kid and my observational skill set. And what it really feels like to me is I feel it feels purposeful to tell this story to teach. It's all about, it's just adding another layer of teaching in life, which I think is just the best of what all of these shows are. The outcome of them, if people pay attention, is that they are teaching you. And as you said, they can be teaching you many things.
It's true.
Right. It's true. But it makes sense that the storytelling piece, and that, because I kept feeling like there's really a theme of what it is that you're doing amongst many things, and it feels like you've been teaching people through the participation that you've had on these shows, and that's a really powerful thing.
Well, thank you. I do, look, reality television or unscripted, we're kind of the bastard stepchild of scripted. We always will be, and that's fine. But when people kind of always ask me why is it so successful, or why do you do it, I like to say that there is a lot to be learned from reality television. We have a lot of value. You would never know the danger that's on a crab boat without Deadliest Catch.
I got it.
Right? You would never know that. You would never have known what it's like to see what happens in a pawn shop without Pawn Stars, and kind of the fascinating things that go through the pawn shop, right? What reality television has done is it's opened up worlds to people that they never knew existed, right? That people actually do drag race on Street Outlaws, right? That this whole kind of car culture, making over old cars, like that exists, and Discovery kind of opens up that. We in reality television have done a good job, I think, in terms of shining a light on regular people, not celebrities, and what they do, and showing their talents. Certainly we have our faults, and we've made mistakes, and we do things we're not perfect.
Still entertaining.
Still entertaining. And I think the wide variety of content when it comes to unscripted is unparalleled. And I think I love scripted television, whether it's dramas like Ozark,
So good.
or comedies. What did I just watch? Mythic Quest on, my friends turned me onto that,
Okay.
on Apple. Oh, hold on, sorry. Hold on, I'm so sorry.
No problem.
So I love scripted, but I think that it's important to have documentaries as unscripted. I think it's the golden age of documentaries. And to your point about teaching and learning, I love consuming documentaries and absorbing that knowledge that you would never get. I think, look, we're now in a transformative time in the country, and there's no better way to quickly learn about the things that are going on in our country than to watch 13th or any of these, variety of documentaries on Netflix or Amazon or whatever your favorite streaming platform is.
Yeah. So Stephen, as a intuitive, creative person who truly, produces things into the world that do transform lives, the people that are being filmed and the people that are watching them, what are the biggest takeaways and learnings that you've gotten in, thinking about really be able to provide our audience, with some tools and some perspectives, some further perspectives? What are those most important things that you've ascertained from all of this experience?
Okay. Okay. It's a tough one. Well, I guess I can say from a producing experience, right? Like for me, looking over like the 15 years, for me, really, I'll just speak from kind of working, right? Like you really do need to kind of appreciate the people you work with, whether that's the people who are on camera and the people who, you work with intimately, in the control room or in an edit bay, because I go from show to show to show to show, whereas like a lot of people will work at a job for 15 years and they may not change. We work, you've seen my credits, like I've done 25 or 30, I don't know what it's up to now, shows. And so you form these relationships and you become friends and then it moves on. And, you may do a show that you love and you think it's great, but then it doesn't get a second season. And I think you really do need to savor those moments in life that you really enjoy. I did a show for Discovery called One Man Army, which was special forces guys competing against each other. And it was such an amazing experience. And we had a great crew. Interviewing these Navy SEALs and Army Rangers was again, I've never met any of those guys before. This was totally foreign to me. But again, a lot of those guys aren't used to really doing interviews in that style. They were very straightforward. So getting them to talk to me in a different way was the challenge. But that was great. Those are totally different types of stories than talking to, I think I had just done Extreme Makeover Home Edition. So like it was completely different. They're telling me about, going on these missions and getting shot at. And I just was crying, like a couple of months before. So I think savoring those moments is important, and, being at Paris Fashion Week. So I think that is important for everybody, is really, because again, it's very cliche that you never know what's going to happen. And so really savoring those moments is important. And the people, right? There's some people who, I met in 2007 on the very first house reality show that I did, that were sitting right next to me in the control room watching the madness happen. And we are friends to today. And then there are people who, I met on one show that we worked on together. And we said we would, and we had the best time in the world, and we just don't see each other again. And just for whatever reason. So I do think it's important to appreciate the people, appreciate the moments that you go through. And then I think the people who are on camera, that's, again, being in a reality show is tough. It's not, it's not easy. And it changed a lot from when I
Yeah.
started to now. Now they get paid much better, and they get a lot of attention,
Yeah.
because of social media, and they can make more money, and it's a much bigger deal now. And but in the same light, it's a little bit more difficult because of that.
Got it.
That's a tough question.
Got it. It's okay. Tell us about, what should we know about the Burke Report? Because people are learning a lot about you, and I know they're going to want to learn more. So what should we know about the Burke Report?
Well, the Burke Report was a blog I started quite a while ago, really just kind of updating people on what's happening in the world of reality television.
Love it.
Similar to my podcast, No Script, No Problem, on the Believe Podcast Network, where I shine a light on people who make reality television like myself. No Script, No Problem. I interview people who work in the industry and, who really kind of make the world happen, because I don't think we get enough credit for what we do. The Burke Report was kind of similar in that it was just kind of telling everybody what's going on and what new shows are coming out and ratings and things like that. So it's a little bit behind the scenes type stuff. So if you love reality television,
I know people love that.
Both of those are for you.
And then the podcast, No Script, No Problem, where you're interviewing people who are in the field doing this creative work, developing shows and really creating all these things that we all love to watch.
Yeah, I think so far it's gotten a really good response. I mean, it's very new. I started it in December of 2019, and so I'll have executive producers on from some of your favorite shows. Nadine Rajabi from Below Deck Mediterranean,
fun.
Heath Lumen. I just had Heath Lumen, who's the co-executive producer on Big Brother, and I think what's great about these people is they bring you kind of the little nuggets that you don't know about your favorite shows. Heath kind of shared some of the secrets to how he creates the challenges for Big Brother. Nadine shared some secrets about what goes on the boat on Below Deck Mediterranean. Izzy Picabara is the showrunner on Masked Singer and shared some of the secrets of what goes on backstage on Masked Singer. So I think the show is kind of fascinating if you are fans of reality television. It gives you a few things that go on behind the curtain, and it's a lot of fun to talk to these people, and they deserve a lot of credit. So if it shines a lot on these people, then I've achieved my goal.
Well, I am possibly reality television's number one fan, so
great.
So I'll definitely be following it. I know it's really funny because there was a point a long time ago where people were making fun of me because it's been a long trajectory with reality television, but as somebody who's a psychologist, and even before I was doing this as a kid, I was just observing what was going on. I feel like my upbringing was, a version of reality television where you're going, is this really happening? And I'm observing it and kind of going, oh, this is fascinating what they're doing and how that's not working and how this is working. And so I really, I've been thrilled, for one, with, the ability to be able to see human life on all different levels and different aspects of life. And I'm an absolute fan, loud and proud. And so I'm definitely going to be checking out all of the shows that are, that you have credit on, and following this trajectory of yours and seeing what it is that you've done. And I love the idea of being able to go, oh yeah, Stephen was working on this, and that's going to be super fun. And so Stephen, before we wrap here, one last question that I like to do, and then we'll literally wrap, is imagine that for a moment that you were you're not here tomorrow, you're gone. We don't need to get gruesome or morbid or anything, but your ability to impart your message to people and the thing that you really want to contribute, that you want them to know and carry forward the rest of their life, where they're kind of going, yeah, Stephen taught me that. And maybe later they kind of forget that you taught them, but like this is something that totally sticks with them, because we're really, we're here helping people to live that much more of a successful life and use their creative abilities and their sensitivities. What is that message that is your big contribution and mark you want to make on the world?
Okay. All right. Put me on the spot, but here's what I'll say, and I think this is apropos for the time that we're in. It's not about you. That is the best piece of wisdom that I will give you. The best decisions I've made in my career and in my life were when I was not selfish and I chose something, whether it's a show or a project, where when it was for the benefit of not just me, but for a team, the team. When I chose projects or I chose, doing development that was for the benefit of me, it never ended well, right? I always feel like I have to remind myself it's not just about you. And I think we live in a time that's very we're self-centered. We have our phones in our hands all the time, and specifically, I live in Los Angeles, and a lot of times, we're very isolated. And now we're in COVID, so we're even more isolated, right? And we're starting to get out, but still, I think the more we think about other people, the more we remind ourselves that it's not just about us. We live in a society. And the more that we can kind of think about how our decisions affect other people, those are the better that we'll be. And that's served me the best. And I look back on my career, and those are my words of wisdom.
Yeah.
Hope that helps.
I love that. What I'm hearing it resonates with me very much. It's the reality that we are all powerful creators, and what we do does create something, whether we're paying attention or not, right? To really select and be of service, to include yourself, but to be of service and to others and to purposes, and that's the way. I always say people kind of, when they're too far in service to others without including themselves, then that can be off track. And so I love just taking this and adding to it and saying, you are always in service to something. So be in the connection of what you want to be in service to, and it's fine to include yourself. But that it makes sense. So I really appreciate this, Stephen. If you're not in the recognition that you are part of a society and a matrix of human beings, you are ultimately living in denial, and you will be at the effect of that, and others will too. So you heard it from Stephen, and you heard it from us today. I love this, and looking at your career and trajectory through unscripted reality television, we are now in an unscripted way, keeping it real and saying, pay attention and be of service to others, and recognize how powerful you are in doing that. So with that, I just really want to thank everybody for being with us today. Thank you, Stephen. This has been such a pleasure. I've learned so much. And for all of you, check out Stephen, the info that he gave you, and follow along and really continue to learn from Stephen. There's so much. I feel like I could be on this for a whole nother hour at least. And, we just welcome you to utilize the perspectives and the insights and the tools that we've shared with you today. All right, everyone, take care, and thanks for being with us.